the Federal High Court gave its judgment, which was appealed up to the Court of Appeal. And from what we just stated, the judgment by the Court of Appeal was equally given against Shell. It can serve as basis for those with similar facts and similar circumstances to bring an action in court and, of course, seek for similar relief as was sought in the case just determined by the Court of Appeal. But in any event, the Federal High Court is the court of first instance, and the Court of Appeal is an appellate court. Well, for now, the facts readily available to me does not state or indicate that the judgment has not been appealed up to the Supreme Court. Because if there is a pending appeal, and at the end of the day, the apex court gives its judgment in favor of Shell, then both the Federal High Court and the Court of Appeal judgment will no longer serve as precedent on the relevant principles determined in that particular case. Oil companies must be held liable for any negligent activity resulting from the operations in those host communities, including the activities of oil spillage. Corruption is endemic in the fabrics of this nation, and it cuts across all spheres of endeavors in this country, including both the operations of the oil company and the activities in their host communities. Now, I was privileged to have a chit chat with one of the traditional rulers of those host communities, and he revealed quite a lot. He revealed quite a lot to me of how he go into certain understanding with those oil companies, and at the end of the day, they get to be paid huge amount of money, and they don't bother to investigate or look into the activities of those companies. Hence, they have been, they have been taken care of for those of them in the helms of the traditional affairs of the community. We cannot rule out the factor of corruption as well as the factor of politics as it is presently in Nigeria. Our problem largely is not the problem of lack of regulation, but the problem is that of lack of the willpower to enforce those rules and regulations and the laws as it were. For instance, I do know that there are quite a number of environmental protection laws in Nigeria, but the problem currently is with the implementation of these laws. That being the case, when these laws are not adequately and effectively implemented, at the end of the day, there's little to nothing that the security agencies can do, including the regulatory agencies. So I would rather suggest a fuller implementation of the laws as it relates not just to environmental protection, but as it relates to the drilling, exploration activities of those oil companies. For every judgment, it is the fundamental right of the aggrieved party to appeal against such a judgment. And if in this particular case, the oil company has appealed against the judgment, and of course, followed it up with an application for stay of execution of the relevant judgment, I wouldn't want to say that they have disobeyed the orders made therein. Because once there is an appeal and there is an application for stay, it has been decided in a plethora of cases that that does not amount to disobedience of an order of court, unless and until one's constitutional right of appeal has been exhausted, and where steps has been taken to exercise such constitutional right of appeal, one cannot say that the order is in breach or in disrespect or disobedience of an order of court. For the oil company not to have complied with the orders made in the relevant judgment, I want to believe that there is a pending appeal to the Supreme Court. And where that is the case, it is their right. They have to exercise it to the fullest. It is only when the right of appeal has been conclusively exhausted and the Apex Court still upholds the judgment of both the Federal High Court and the Court of Appeal, that is when we can now say categorically that the oil company has disobeyed the orders of the court where they failed to obey them.